Hey there, hi there, hello there. Yet again, I am with you with Bowen on the Birds on the A2D radio network. And I have a really special guest this week, Brandon Brooks, the former three-time Pro Bowl Eagles former right guard, now wending his way through the financial landscape as an MBA student at Wharton, and he has a summer job with Goldman Sachs in New York. So he's going to be coming to us live from New York, as if it were Saturday night. And Brandon, fascinating guy, great story, everything he's been through in his career, and now heading off in a really challenging and impressive new direction. So let's bring him aboard now. Brandon Brooks, live from New York. How you doing?
I'm doing well. As always, great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this. I just can't imagine what you've undertaken here. You know, you're a guy. I looked this up actually. 58 million in career earnings, thereabouts, somewhere around there.
Oh man, just put me out there with the numbers, huh? I mean,
Well, just to underscore, like you didn't need to do this. I mean, you could have just sat on a beach the rest of your life and been, and not had to worry about money too much. But you threw yourself into this really challenging new direction. Why? What's the thinking process?
for me, there was always more. I'm one of those guys where I never get into anything about the money. I get into anything that I do because I love it, and the thing that I always run to is always run to challenges, always run to the hardest things. After my second year, I started interning in different, banks, different areas under the finance umbrella, and realized that I had a passion for numbers, had a passion for the finance industry. And when I retired, my final year, actually studied for the GMAT. During the season, retired, took the GMAT, got accepted to Wharton, started there full time. And the way I saw it was, nothing will ever be as challenging as the NFL, was over my career. But I realized that I needed something close to that, and it came down to investment banking or trading for me. And I am very fortunate and glad to be at Goldman Sachs doing investment banking, around a ton of extremely smart people, around a ton of people who have an elite work ethic, and also work in teams similar to what I did when I was playing pro.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Is it like the NFL in any way in terms of uh, preparation? The intensity of the people that are in this, and what is it? Are there any parallels that you've noticed?
Yeah. The first is, we work in teams, and it's, similar to, when I was playing. It's not me versus you, it's us versus them. It's us against the world. And, for us, it's trying to compete, trying to win consistently, trying to continuously set that bar at the highest standard. But then the work ethic piece, right? I'm working, 15, 18-hour days, and, it's 6 days a week. The reason the interview is actually today is because today is our day off.
Wow.
You may wake up and have 10 different Outlook emails that you need to respond to, whether it's model building or putting a slide deck together, or doing some type of due diligence. It's never the same every day. I'm learning a ton, having a ton of fun, and again around a ton of smart people. And it's like being a rookie all over again. You make what I consider stupid mistakes just because everything's new. Anytime you do something new, it's a challenge, to yourself, but it also helps you grow. And so I feel like I've grown a ton. I've learned a ton so far, and look forward to continue learning.
Now I'm going to get back to this, but to go back a little bit, you're from Milwaukee, right?
Correct.
So did you grow up thinking you were going to be a professional athlete? Was that always your focus? Because it seems like you've had a lot of other interests. And I know, Milwaukee isn't Texas or Florida when it comes to high school football? I know you played at Miami of Ohio, which is not Alabama or LSU. You know, how did this come about, and did you grow up thinking you were going to do something like you're doing now, perhaps?
Yeah, actually. So, I guess to address the first part of the question, did I ever think I was going to go pro? Honestly, um, I just wanted to get a scholarship because, my parents can afford college. And so I was just thinking like, hey, here's an opportunity where, I have some God-given gifts, the ability to, get a scholarship and really kind of take advantage of the education. And so, yeah, when I got to Miami, I'd probably say it wasn't until like maybe my junior year where agents started calling me like, oh, hey, like, you're a decent player. Like, maybe I'm able to represent you sometime, down the road. And then that kind of told me like, oh, like, maybe I'm all right. Like, and honestly, I thought like maybe I get a free agent tryout and, maybe stick on a couple, stick on a couple teams or a couple rosters, maybe a couple years. And then basically from there, you like have to go, and get a real job. If you'd have told me, hey, I'd have played 10 years, would have been a Super Bowl champion, 3-time Pro Bowler, all PFF this and, X, Y, and Z, like, I back then, would have laughed at you. Right. And so honestly, I was more sure about where I'm at now than like, my NFL career. And actually after my, second year in the league, realized that like, hey, like, the average career is 3.5 years. Let me go out and at least find what I like to do. And yeah, again, start interning in banks and realize like, hey, like this is it. Again, it may not be exactly like, pro football, but like it feels like every time I go into work, right, like I'm going to run out of that tunnel on Sundays. And so I knew that like for me, this is what, kind of set my heart on fire. And so yeah, I've planned to do this a long time. A lot of my teammates, whether it was in Houston or Philly, knew I wanted to do this for a long time. And now that I'm doing it, it'll never be like pro football, but again, like it feels close to me.
Wow. Now, do your friends from football ask you a lot about this? Are they curious about it? What do they, if they do ask you, what do they ask you about?
Uh, if you've been around me over these 10 years, right, like playing, like you've known for a while that I've always wanted to do this. And they would ask me different questions like, where do you want to go in finance? Like, what do you want to do? Different things as far as investing, prior to me coming here, doing the job and like, why go back to school? Like to your point, right? Like, and I can't emphasize this enough really. Like, again, I don't have to do this, but I choose to do this because this is something I love to do. And so doing this, even working 15, 18-hour days, when you do something you love, it never feels like work. And it's funny to say that, right? Like investment banking, warriors for long hours in the grind, but like every day I go in there, like, I'm excited. I wake up with energy. Like it's truly something that I feel like I was really called to do. And so like, yeah, they would ask me different questions like, why go back? Why investment banking? Like why not a beach? Why not, just hang out? Why, even if you do go in finance, why not something that is not, so demanding?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, that's one thing you said about why you were doing this. I believe in one interview I read, you referenced increasing financial literacy in my community. Tell me about that. What do you want to do?
Really want to, show people that come from my community and look like me that, although when it comes to what we see on TV and what's kind of portrayed, we can do more. We can do more than, be what I call under the entertainment or entertainer umbrella, right? Whether it's an athlete, a music artist, some along those lines. Like, hey, like, I tell, athletes this all the time. Like, if you put as much into anything else and as much sacrifice into anything else as you do for sports, you will be successful. There is no doubt about it. And I really realized that once I got out of the NFL. And the reason I say that is, and hey, you've been around practice, so you know what it looks like. Like you can physically like see like somebody giving 100%. And the second you don't give 100%, like it's over.
Yeah.
And so if you, take that into anything, no matter what it is and what you want to do, you will be successful because you're used to, that grind, that pressure, that consistency, that persistence. And so I tell guys that all the time, like, hey, like, I hope you do play as long as you play. But the likelihood of you playing, really past 3.5 years, which is the average career, isn't high. Like it just is what it is. But like if it doesn't work out, like it's okay because based on some of the things that you went through and how hard you worked, that will transfer over.
Why do you think so many players have trouble adjusting to life after football? Did you find in your career that a lot of guys were as focused on it as you were, or were a lot of guys just thinking, I'll play and then whatever, how did you see it when you were playing?
For me, it was like when I'm in it, like I'm going to give everything, every fiber of my being to be great. And what I mean by that is like, I didn't like go anywhere in the off season. I stayed in the city. I continued to go to the facility. I continued to study film. Like it just never turned off. That's just like, who I am. Like, I mean, as you know, like I've never been like a big social media presence because like that doesn't matter to me. Like being good at my craft consistently over time has always been the most important thing for me. And so, yeah, when I was playing, like, I was all in. And to that point, I think guys have a tough time transitioning because of what it takes and what being good in the NFL requires. Like people are like, oh, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But that is what's required to be good at football. I mean, in the off season, sure, right? Like, because I think, it's your job. So you're going to work out and run, do all that, like, as you should. But you should also figure out, like, at the very, like, at bare minimum, what do you like to do? Like, what could you do for free every day? And if you can get that question answered by the time you're done, and at least, have some type of mentor where, that because, the learning curve is steep, right? And I always say, like, in anything other than, like, let's just say football, because, obviously that's what I did. Like, I can't go in a boardroom and be like, well, the safety came down here and there's a blitz off the edge. Like, that makes no sense, right?
Right.
And so if you can get a mentor to help you lessen that learning curve and, whatever you decide to do on top of finding your passion, I think that transition will be a lot easier for guys. But yeah, you don't have a choice but put all your eggs in one basket because there's millions of people trying to do the same thing. And the talent gap is so short or so small that like the second you slip up, like that could be it forever. Right. And so, I can't sit here and say like, hey, like, go out here and do this, go out there and do that, because what's required is you being all in all the time. But in the off seasons, if guys can, I guess answer two questions. What do I like to do? And who can, guide me and help me lessen that learning curve? I mean, I think the transition, will be a little bit easier.
All right. Well, we're going to pause for just a moment for a word from a sponsor. I hope Brandon will stick around and we can ask him some more stuff on the other side here. It won't be very long, I promise.
Of course, of course.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
All right, we're back already with Brandon Brooks, former Eagles guard, current financial maven in Manhattan. Hey, Brandon, about the Eagles and their offensive line, it's my contention, and this is our agree or disagree question for today for the fans. My contention, it's not going to be one that fans are going to have a hard time agreeing with, I don't think, that the Eagles have had the best offensive line in the NFL the last decade. There have been some ups and downs with injuries and so forth, but year in and year out, this is the best unit. Do you agree with that? And if you do, why do you think it is?
100% agree. I mean, you got to give, you know, two guys and then two coaches credit, right? So two guys being Howie, obviously selecting and, you know, going out and selecting whether it's in the draft or selecting whether free agency, going out and getting guys. And then you have to give, you know, Stoutland, obviously, I mean, a ton of credit. I mean, just to, you know, touch on Stout. I mean, Stout's been like a, you know, father figure for a lot of us, really. You know, from day one. But from even just using myself, from where I was in Houston to, you know, where I was when I left, I mean, it was night and day. The greatest thing about Stout, and I think the greatest thing that make the great coaches great, is you're not just a coach, but you're a great teacher. And the thing about Stout is it doesn't matter how you learn. Once he figures out how you learn, whether it's, you know, let's just say in the classroom on the whiteboard, you know, being on the field through repetitions or, you know, a combination of two, whatever. Once he figures out how you learn, like that is how he will teach you. And, you know, one thing Stout would always tell guys is like, you're not going to tire me out. So like, you know, no matter how long it takes, like Stout will be on you. And no matter how, you know, great you become, like Stout will coach you hard and coach you consistently. And I couldn't, you know, ask for more, you know, out of a coach. Not just, you know, as a coach, but, you know, as a person. You know, his wife, Allison, Mrs. You know, Stoutland was always awesome, whether it was, you know, inviting us over for food or, you know, getting us Christmas gifts. Like you're truly in a family, like when you're in that room. So, you know, kudos to both of those. And, you know, Howie, man, you know, wheeling and dealing, man. You know what I mean? Like Howie, you know, it seems like out of nowhere pulls like one of the craziest trades, right? Like, you know, and gets the best players so you can, you know, win immediately. And then, you know, you got to give Doug and, you know, Nick credit too, right? Like schematically, you know, putting things together that put us in the best position to win, you know, whatever our, you know, talents or strengths are. You know, they'll do that on top of listening to us like, hey, like, you know, if you need to slide away from me, like go do that. Or like, hey, if you need this first down, like, you know, I got a weaker opponent over me, like we can go get this done. And so, yeah, I mean, those four guys, I mean, has really, you know, put that old line, you know, on a pedestal. And, you know, a lot of people were like, you know, when I retire, you know, obviously got hurt, you know, the last, you know, 2 years. And, you know, thought like for whatever reason, like the O line would dip. Like, nah, like it's, you know, next man up. Like, you know, you lose players, but, you know, they reload, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like I retired, but then Isaac stepped up. And then, you know, when Isaac switched over, I'm blanking on this. Landon, obviously, at left guard, you know, came into his own. And so, you know, I don't think, you know, it'll be any different. Obviously, like they're trying to figure out the right guard position, you know, whether it's, you know, Jurgens or Tyler Steen, right? So, like, I have the utmost faith in Stout that he will put the best player out there, and whoever that player is, like, we'll be prepared and we'll get the job done. I mean, obviously, you know, Kelsey and Lane, you know, cornerstones of the O line. I mean, look what he did with Jordan, right? Like the guy had never played football before, right? And now he's what, like a top 5, like top 3 tackle in the league, man. Like it's unheard of. You know what I mean? So like, I have the utmost faith.
How did Stout make you a better player than you were in Houston? I mean, you already knew how to play guard. You'd been doing it for quite a while, and you're a smart guy. What did he tell you that was so different from what you'd been doing previously?
I mean, he just continued just my progression, right? Like, continued to challenge me, continue to coach me hard. He's a stickler for the small things, right? Like the small things make the big things attainable. And there's one quote. I mean, most people have heard, you know, hungry dogs run faster for sure. But there's one quote in our room that like always stuck with me and has stuck with me like even post playing. It's a Bruce Lee quote actually, where it was like, "I fear not the man that has practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but I fear the man that has practiced one kick 10,000 times." And so you never get tired, or to never get tired of doing the same thing over and over and over. The reason being is like you can always be better and better and better. And so every day, like, you know, it's the same step, it's the same intensity, it's consistent, it's you know, persistence as well.
Wow.
You never get tired of doing the right thing every day, week in, week out. You know, trusting in your fundamentals. And I probably say all that together is, you know, how Stout, you know, helped me, but also whatever you thought your ceiling was, Stout's going to raise that just a little bit.
Really?
You know what I mean? Like, however good you think you can be, Stout will push you to see if you can break that ceiling. Because a lot of times, like, it's something in your mind where like, oh, like maybe I can get to this level. But then like, say you do get that level. Well, you're never comfortable there because, well, maybe I can go to a different level that I didn't think of. And Stout is consistently pushing you to see how good you can really be. And, you even surprise yourself along the way.
What you said about the offensive line functioning just fine whenever you got hurt or someone else got hurt, that's obviously a great thing. But thinking of it, if it were me, and like in my job, we all have ego, right? Is it unsettling in some way to see things proceed without you, just as well as they were with you? I mean, that would be a little there's room for insecurity there, I would say, I would think.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. But for me, like, I'm a winner, man, right? So, like, as long as they're winning, like, I could care less, right? Like, when I'm in there, like, what type of player, like, I was. And, there's no denying that. But at the same time, like, I'm a team player first. It's we, not I. And so for me, it was like, whether it was me or somebody else in there, like, is the team winning? If the answer is yes, then, like, go do what you got to do. Like, I'm about championships, not, individual, accolades. And so, seeing, like, for example, probably one of the biggest questions I got last year is like, well, do you feel a certain way, like, about them going to the Super Bowl? The answer is no. Like, I thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. Like, the way the first half was, I thought the game was just going to go in general. Like, you can ask anybody who's around me when they ask me that question. Like, I want to see them win. I want to see them have success. Like, I want to see them, go out there and beat everybody. Like, I want to see them win, championships. And, so for me, like, whether it was with me or without me, like, I want to see them win. And, like, that's all that matters to me.
But, I wished I was out there in Arizona covering that, especially with Andy Reid going up against the Eagles. And I covered Andy for like 10 years here. I was even texting with him a few times during the week. But did you want to be there? I mean, irrespective of being jealous or anything, did you think, boy, it'd be great to be in another Super Bowl? I wish I had stuck in for a while longer.
Honestly, I was fortunate enough to walk away. And what I mean by that is, like, if I wanted to continue playing, like, maybe it wouldn't have been with the Eagles, but I could have played somewhere.
Right.
And my biggest thing was, for me, it was time to walk away. It was time to do something else. And, that's a closed chapter in my life. We'll always have love for the game, the NFL, the Eagles, the Texans. But hey, like, I chose to walk away. So I have no regrets. Like I said, just wanted to, see him win. Want to see him, win it all this year as well. And that'll never change.
Do you talk to the guys and the guys you were with on the O-line? Do they stay in contact pretty regularly?
Yeah, I talked to, like, Kelsey, obviously Lane as well. Talk to Jalen, talk to a bunch of guys. I go to practice, once every couple of months just to see what's going on. Talk to Stout, talk to Sirianni, Howie, like all those guys. I'm an only child, right? And so, like, I never had brothers, but, like, for me, like, that's the closest thing that came to it. And just because I'm not playing anymore, the communication doesn't stop. Like, it'll always be love. Anything, they ever need, it's no problem. For example, the Tyler Steen kid. Stout reached out to me like, yo, like, come up here and talk to him, help him kind of see the game the way you're seeing it, blah, blah, blah. And, like, 4 days later, I was there. And, it's a family thing. It's not about, ego or pride or, I don't play anymore. Like, none of that. It's just like, somebody who I consider family asked me to do something, and, like, it'll be done.
Right. Well, that's cool. And how was Tyler Steen? What did you think of him?
Well, my thing is, like, it's hard to sing anything, right, in t-shirt and shorts.
Right. But was he receptive to your points, and did he, eager to learn and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Great kid. Can move well, and is very humble, and is all about learning the game. Whatever, again, like I was saying earlier, whatever can lessen his learning curve, like he's willing to do. He's willing to put the time and the work in. We're sitting there kind of, because they were, like, doing a walkthrough, whatever, and I was sitting there kind of letting him know, like, how I saw it. Some things to be, kind of alert for as you're, moving through, the plays. And he was nothing but, receptive. So, uh, you know, I, I can't wait to see him in training camp. Can't wait to see, I'm sure awesome performance he's going to put on. So, I look forward to it.
Now, I think it's going to be him or Cam Jurgens probably at right guard. I think Jurgens has an edge just from having been here last year. It just seems to me that Stout and that whole offensive operation, maybe it takes a while. It's really hard as a rookie to just jump in there and do very well. I know Isaac had a lot of trouble with that. Landon Dickerson, not as much, but he is a real freak. I mean, he's a humongous guy. Do you think Jurgens has an edge? Do you have any thoughts on that matter? I guess you watch these guys a little.
Yeah, I mean, just naturally, right? Like he's had a year in the NFL, he's had a year in the system, he's had a year because he drafted him to play center, and now he's going to play guard. So he's had a year to kind of figure it out, like as far as whether I'm playing center or guard, like how do I need to adjust my stance, how do I need to adjust the way I'm playing the game. I mean, just naturally he has for sure an advantage. But that's the great thing about the NFL, right? Like it's a competition, and it doesn't matter what you look like, where you came from or anything like that. Like the best player, will play. And so, basically, it's gonna be a competition, right? Like every day in training camp, and no matter who, wins the job, they'll both make each other better. So, and in the long run, that's all that matters.
I was glad to hear that he had bulked up a little bit. I know when we were talking last year about what would happen at right guard if Isaac wasn't re-signed, I know somebody involved in the operation was wondering whether the right side would be too light if it were Jurgens and Lane. It would be a lot lighter than the left side, which is two enormous guys. But Jurgens apparently has added some weight, and that's not going to be as big a factor, I guess, for him. What is at guard? Do you have to be a certain weight? I mean, it's not like tackle where the quickness seems to be so the coin of the realm. It seems like guards need to be really, really, really strong, solid, heavy guys.
I say strong and solid. As far as like heavy, I mean, it just depends on if you can get the job done. Like to your point, as far as like being strong and being guard. One thing about being guard is like a lot of times you're going to be the initial point of contact. And so like whether it's a double team, right? Like you're going to come off the ball, like I'm going to come here first. Like when I was playing with Lane, then Lane gets in behind, or like, vice versa with Kelsey, right? Like I'm here and then Kelsey comes. Like, so like being able to do that, like it doesn't matter what you weigh. It's just like, can you get the job done? I've seen Cam, and he's definitely bulked up. Which, hey, you do what you got to do to, make sure you can get the job done. But as far as a light side, I mean, I guess you can consider Lane light, but shit, I mean, but Lane's super strong, man. So like, it doesn't matter.
His frame though is kind of lanky for an offensive lineman. He's not a prototypical OL guy, I wouldn't think. He started out as a quarterback.
But at the end of the day, he gave 0 sacks last year. So like, I mean,
he's a great player. I'm not deprecating his talent at all. No.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, no matter what you look like, if you're strong, you get the job done. You get the job done. So I mean, there's all different types of body types from different guys that no matter what it is, they can still get the job done. So
okay. Well, I want to talk to you a little more about body types and yours after we have one more break here from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with Brandon Brooks.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
And we're back with Bowen on the Birds, and Brandon Brooks, the Wolf of Wall Street, is with us today. Brandon, so when you were a player, I believe they listed you at 346, 6'5", 346. Now, I'm sure you haven't gotten much shorter, but you don't weigh 346 anymore.
No, so I mean, honestly, I was a little bit heavier than that.
Really? How heavy were you?
About 360, 365.
Wow.
Yeah, I was always naturally just a bigger guy. Right now, I'm down to about 300 pounds. Just trying to, eat right. I guess when I was younger, I would always think like, oh, I can, out exercise a bad diet. But then, as you get older, you realize that like you can work out, half of what you did as long as you're eating right and, see the results and lose the weight. So just trying to eat better, trying to eat more consistent. Yeah, definitely down to, 300, trying to, keep it down because, I was concerned, hey, like maybe I might go the other way, which would be another problem. So
yeah, you see that too. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question here, but I know a lot of fans, whenever I'm out in the, at parties and stuff, and people talk about players who have lost a ton of weight after their careers are over, I get this question. There are people who are cynical about that, who think, well, there was something going on there that allowed that guy to weigh, so much more than he weighs now. Is that the case in the NFL or not? I mean, do guys get artificially enhanced very much these days? I know they have testing and stuff like that.
Oh, like no. Like, I mean, I get the question, I get the concern, but it's like, as far as like the steroid testing or the ACH, like it's truly random. It's all the time. There's a ton
And
of
there's enormous consequences if you.
yeah, there's consequences, whether it's from playing or a monetary standpoint. Like it's just and like if somebody did it, like you would hear about it, like it would come out.
Okay. Good to know, because that's something, I swear, that's something people wonder about, because there are guys that lose 100 pounds,
Yeah.
and you're like, how in the world, but.
Well, the thing is, like, one example would be, like Alan Faneca, right?
Mm-hmm.
From where he was to where he is now, I mean, he has to be at least 100 pounds down, but like he runs marathons, like he works out consistently. Like, I mean, it's just, and Lane Johnson said it best, man. It's PHW, man, pure hard work. Like that's all it is. Like you're eating right, you're running, and doing everything to get the weight off. So like, yeah, you can be big, and he was big, naturally, just like I was, big naturally. But like, you make that decision to, get on a meal plan, or if you're fortunate enough to hire a chef that can cook healthy things that may not taste healthy, but like that's all that matters is the consistency. So
Well, that's cool. So about your career, I've been wanting to ask you this ever since you retired, and I haven't had the venue to do it, but you were at a very high level and you started having these injuries. I remember vividly that day in New Orleans, the first Achilles tear, that the playoff game that Nick Foles was quarterbacking for the year after the Super Bowl. It's kind of dark and dingy there in the corridors of the Superdome, and I see you coming out of the locker room on that little cart thing with one leg, on the roller cart. That must have been just really difficult. 4 major injuries over the next 3+ years, and you kept coming back. And I thought a lot of guys, I guess, quit because they can't do it anymore, because they aren't any good anymore. You were never at that point. It just, something kept happening every year, every few months. How difficult was that to accept?
Well, so it happened in 19, so 2 years after.
Mm-hmm.
And
you did play a full season in 2019, but then the regular season finale, you had that freak shoulder injury. Yeah.
Well, no, that was, I mean, so much stuff happened, right? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, I don't know, like it's a part of the game. And I always say, like, if you actually play, like you're actually out there playing, like you're gonna get hurt. There's 100% chance. And like, hey, like, it's a young man's game, and it's funny to say that, being 34 in 2 months here, but like, you can't play forever. Like Father Time, catches up to people, sooner or later. And hey, like, for 8 years, I had a pretty, injury-free career, and like,
Right.
asked for more than that. And so, yeah, like, just like, going into, this type of work now, getting hurt is nothing more than a challenge, right? Like your things that are, out of your control is like, the injury itself and like the rehab. You're going to get the best doctors, you're going to have the best trainers. And so the way I saw it was me coming back at a high level was just all up to me. Like either I'm going to take and attack my rehab just as hard as if I was playing to get back, not just to where I was, but to get back better, or the opposite is going to happen. And so like, that's the only thing I can control. And so for me, like it was never an option to not come back better.
Yeah.
And so anytime I had a challenge, like, I ran to it. And so getting hurt again is a part of the game. And, it definitely does test you, right? Like you could sit there and be like, oh, like, injuries. But like, I was never that type of person. Like no matter what it was or any type of setback, like it was just a challenge, something I needed to get through, something I needed to, prove to myself, like, hey, like, although you may have stumbled or you may have fell, like you got to get up and keep going. And so like the injuries never sidetracked me. It never deterred me. Yeah, there were some difficult moments, but as with anything, like you're gonna have difficult times. Like,
Was
nothing.
it hard to decide at the end, okay, this is it. This is the one. This is the final injury. I know the Eagles had talked about trading you that previous offseason, and you weren't really looking forward to that. And then you got hurt again. And was it easy to say, okay, that's it? Or were you thinking, oh, I could rehab this,
Yeah, definitely thinking like I could rehab this and get back. But at the end of the day, like, hey, right, like I had a good career, I had a great run. I had a lot of time to think like, hey, like, it's time to do something else, man. Like it's okay to, walk away. Like, everything, you wanted to accomplish, you accomplished. You're around a ton of great guys, a great organization, a ton of memories. Like, everything was awesome, man. But like, hey, there's other things you want to do. There's other passions you have.
Yeah.
And, you had a great career. Like what more do you want at this point? Like,
Yeah.
go
Don't
and
be greedy. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Don't be greedy, right? Exactly like you said, right? Like, hey, like, and no matter how it ended, and I told Howie this, I told Sirianni this, like, no matter how it ended, like we'll always be family. Like, there's no hard feelings. Like, the trade stuff, like no hard feelings with that. Like, it's a part of the game, right? Like, I sit on this side of the table, and you sit on that side of the table. So you make the the decision that's best for you. And like, hey, I totally get it. Like, if I were in your situation and this was happening, like I probably would make the same decision too. Like, it's a business at the end of the day. Like, we are family, but I get it's a business. And so like, hey, like it was time to do something else. And like, I was more than okay to, leave the game and go do something else.
Okay. So let's talk about the Eagles. And coming off the Super Bowl, they are rated one of the very best teams in the league again, as I think they should be. But I think you and I both know teams that get to the Super Bowl, win or lose, but especially lose, seems like the next year is all uphill. Teams get off to a bad start, guys get hurt. It just doesn't seem to go the way it looks on paper a lot of times if you're a Super Bowl team. And Cincinnati, for example, last season really started slow, eventually came around. And if that guy hadn't taken that penalty, you know, uh, knocking Mahomes out of bounds, that Cincinnati might have gotten back to the Super Bowl, but they didn't. What do you think of the Eagles? The biggest concern I have is the defense and the way it's been rebuilt, and there's a new coordinator. I think that's going to maybe take some time for everybody to get on the same page there, and it's a tougher schedule. What do you see when you look at the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what you said, right? Like anytime, you win a lot of games, and, you get to the Super Bowl, like one, I don't think a lot of people, think about this is you play all the winners the next year. And so your schedule is going to be one of the toughest in the league. But also, like, I'm going to be honest, as long as they got Jalen, there's no concern here. Jalen's built different. I think, you see that now. There's been very few players that I've ever been around that just had it, like had the juice. And Jalen's probably maybe the fourth player in my career. The other three being Andre Johnson, Arian Foster, and Jason Peters. They just had it. You could see it. Like every time they came around, like it was just an aura about him that was just different. Like there was never any doubt in their mind, and there was never any doubt. Like you never doubted them because you know they had it. And so as long as they got, as long as Jalen's out there, I mean, there's no concern as far as I'm concerned. Like Jalen won't allow guys to, rest on what happened last year. Jalen won't allow guys to stay at the same level they were last year. Jalen is consistent, persistent, and he's a winner. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can ask for anything more, from your franchise quarterback. And as like with the way he's on guys, with the way he's always trying to improve and trying to win every year, whatever you think the best version of the Eagles is, he will continue to raise that bar. And so there's no doubt in my mind that like he will have those guys humming at every level. Offensively,
he has the tools. I mean, they've got, I think they're stacked everywhere offensively. The only question is that right guard spot, and they really either one of those guys is going to be a top 15, right guard. I think, and it just seems like offensively they are set. They have
on the defensive side, right? Like new coordinator and everything, but like look at all the players coming back. Yeah, you got some new players here and there, but like that's the great thing about having vets, right? Like having Fletcher Cox, having Brandon Graham, having Darius, like having James Bradbury, like so on and so forth. Like those guys will help those younger guys, like learn to be pros, learn to be winners. Understand what it takes week in and week out to go out there and win. And, the signs of a good coordinator is you put your players in the best position to win. And so whatever the strength is, because like you said, right, the defense is different. Whatever the strength is of that defense or, players individually, he will put them in the best position to win. And so like, yeah, it'll be some changes. And yeah, maybe it might be some bumps in the road, but overall, like, the core of the defense and the core of the offense is still there. And so, yeah, like I expect them to, be the team they were last year.
Really well said. I agree with you. I think odds are there are going to be more injuries this year, and you'll have to see how they respond to that. But I do think what you said about Jalen is absolutely true. I can't believe their luck in coming up with a guy like that. I don't think really, I was covering the team when they drafted him, and I know for a fact that the plan was, well, we need a really cheap backup because we had just paid Wentz all this money, and maybe this guy will turn out to be good, and we can get something for him in a few years. That was really the foremost. That certainly in the back of their minds, they're thinking, okay, Carson gets hurt a lot. If this guy is good, maybe he ends up being the quarterback someday. But nobody was thinking what they have right now. Nobody in that room had any idea that this guy was who he is, and it's amazing. It really is.
Well, the thing is, I always say this: one, give his parents credit. High character, tremendous people. His dad was a coach, did a hell of a job preparing him. But then, like, look at his history, right? Was at Alabama, did what he needed to do to, become a starter, played well, and then I believe it was Tua that replaced him. He went to Oklahoma, replicated the success.
Yeah.
When he came into the league, obviously the Carson and Jalen situation, he did everything he needed to do. Then he got in there, and then it was, oh, can he do this? Can he do that? Well, what about this? And everywhere he's been, given the time, he has transcended anything anybody has, ever said about him or, the things he couldn't do. And now, like, look at him now, right? And the guys who, been around him, who have seen him work, who have seen the impact he has had on the team and the city, it was only a matter of time.
Cool. Well, we have one more commercial break, and I'm actually we have just a few more questions for Brandon Brooks, and then I'm going to let him go because this is the only day off he has all week. So I don't want to monopolize it too much. But here we are with one more word from our sponsor.
Hey, Birds fans, the NFL schedule has arrived and Philly Sports Trips has all the details now. Visit the site phillysportstrips.com. This is sure to be an epic season. Be sure to go there now to make sure that you don't get shut out. Join us in Tampa, LA, Seattle, or when we get revenge in Kansas City. Don't want to fly? No problem. Gather up your crew and hop aboard one of our signature boisterous bus trips to DC or New York. Sign up now and make sure to mention A2D. Don't miss out on the best Philly fan experience anywhere. Philly Sports Trip customers always stay at the best hotels and meet NFL legends. Book today.
And we're back with Bowen on the Birds and Brandon Brooks, who is kind enough to stick with us here from his penthouse apartment, in the heart of Manhattan, where he dominates the social scene there, I'm quite sure.
Oh my God. Les never change.
No, not me. But I'm too old to change, for one. I do want to ask you about New York. You grew up in Milwaukee, played at a school that wasn't in a big city, then went to Houston, which is a big city, but not New Yorkish. Then you came here, which is a big city, but not New Yorkish. And you're in Manhattan. I know you're working 18 hours a day, but what is that like? That would be a tremendous cultural adjustment for me. I know.
Yeah. New York is different, but the thing is, like, it's the Northeast vibe, right? Like the go, like the go get it done, the hustle, like the grit, and the grind, really. New York is, I guess you could say like a bigger version of Philly. Like, Philly is like go. Philly's a grind. Philly's, blue collar shit. Philly's literally gritty. And so like it's bigger. There's more people. And I guess you adjust to that. But overall, like, the hustle, the go get it, that hasn't changed. And so, for me, I mean, working so many hours, right? Like, I live, a couple blocks away from the office. And so like, it's just like the office or home. And so like, it's not like I'm, having a ton of time to like, get out here and, do X, Y, and Z, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just more people. It's an adjustment, but it's all good.
Do people there know who you are? Do you get recognized? And the people you work with, do they know, what you did in your career and so forth?
The people I work with, just because like, you got to put your resume in, right? So like, I just can't have a 10-year gap between like college and now, like, what happened. So, with, in my job, obviously, but, a couple people here and there, whether they're from Philly or Philly fans or just happen to be, diehard football fans. Yeah. But, it's cool, right? Like to just be, a regular person, walk on the street and, hang out, do whatever. It's good, man. It's totally cool. So yeah.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool. I wanted to ask you another NFL question. We're in kind of a dead period in the NFL year, probably the deadest period between the spring work and training camp. I have heard agents and coaches say that they're always uncomfortable this time of year because they consider this the most dangerous time of year. This seems to be, if guys are going to get into trouble or do something stupid or get hurt doing something stupid, this is always the time when that happens. Have you ever heard that? And did you get a lot of admonitions about that during your career?
I mentioned it earlier. The most important thing for me was, to show up and to show out, right? Like, there was nothing that I was more focused on when I was playing football than playing football. And so I'm going to, again, I stayed in Philly my entire time when I was playing. I would come to the facility every day, work out, run. And then after that, like, go home and chill. Like, there's nothing out there for me to be doing that's going to jeopardize my career or to jeopardize, or to put the Eagles in a bad position. Like, there's nothing more important than that, when you're in it. So like, coaches definitely, right? Like, and, you got to do what you got to do because there's always going to be a guy or two that, doesn't listen or goes off and do their own thing. But like,
I just wish everybody was like you, I think, and then they wouldn't be worried about this. But
yeah, well, hey, man, we come from all different backgrounds with all different, types of interests, right? So, but coaches, whether I was in Houston or whether I was in Philly, like, as soon as we had the last meeting of the year and go off to the off season, or as soon as we break like OTAs, like, hey, there's, no need to be out past midnight, no need to be out there, doing X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
and like, again, for me, like, all I ever cared about was being good at football. Like nothing else, mattered. Because I always felt like it's a super short window, and like, hey, you want to go out there and have fun and do X, Y, and Z, like, even if you played, 10 years, right? You're 32 years old. You got a lot of life left, to go out there and party or do whatever you want to do.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
And
I think the NFL should hire you to go around and tell these guys that.
well, it's a, a short-term sacrifice for a lifetime gain, man. And like,
Yeah.
I never saw it as like, oh, I got, a month off, let me go and maximize it. Like, nah, like when you're done playing, like you had the rest of your life. And I get it, right? Like when you're in it, it sounds like, oh man, like, when I'm done playing, like that's so far away, but it's
Yeah.
so close to you, you don't even realize it. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I know in my job even, there are things that I wish I had savored more, that seemed like a giant hassle when I was going through them. But then you get on the other side and you're like, I'm never going to do that again. Well, yeah, darn,
yeah,
it's suddenly a different perspective. But I will let you go. This has been just wonderful. And I really appreciate your time. And I really respect what you're doing here, and just have all the admiration in the world for the way you live your life. And, I think the NFL, if everybody was like you, the NFL would change the world, man. It would be a real force for good. But keep in touch. Let me know what you're up to. And, if you ever run for president or anything, I'll vote for you.
Les, man, I appreciate you, man. You've always been great to me. Anything you ever need, just send me a text. If you want to have me back on the show at anytime, would love to come
I
on.
probably will. Yeah.
And as always, man, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you, Brandon. Have a good summer there in New York. And that is it for this week's Bowen on the Birds.